The extraction shooter genre has taken a few forms over the years and has really bumped up in popularity. From Hunt Showdown to Escape from Tarkov, the biggest streamers in the world have been playing these types of games, and today we're going to be talking about probably the most accessible of these games, and it's only just came out this year, and it's called The Cycle Frontier. The Cycle is free to play, which means there are some different monetization practices which we will go over in this video if I think they're ethical, egregious, or somewhere in between. But regardless, I will be rating this game less on, the money to buy into the experience and more of, is it worth living in this kind of multiplayer game, spending all of your time in it, and potentially spending some money on microtransactions. And while The Cycle Frontier is a very bad name for a video game, in this video I hope to answer if the game itself is as bad as the name, or if it's just pretty decent. Either way, let's hop right in. Developed and published by Jaeger and releasing on June 8th of just this year 2022, the game has come out to some mixed responses, mostly due to, I will say this now at the beginning of the video, there has been, I guess, rampant cheating in the game, and in my, I'm gonna say about 15 hours of playtime, I haven't come across any of it. A lot of the Steam reviews mentioned things like a lot of China names showing up, server skipping, hopping, things like that, but I'm not seeing any of that personally, so while I had a good experience, some people did not, so that's to be known, but hey, that's just me. But really looking at the game itself, it's clear to see inspiration from both Escape from Tarkov as well as Hunt Showdown in my opinion. And while I do think some comparisons will be very valid, and I'll go over those in just a few moments because it's very genre specific, I'm not going to be completely comparing these games because it's not fair to The Cycle, as it is probably the lesser valued game, because it definitely does put in the effort to differentiate itself in quite a few ways. Now with that being said, I'd like to start with what I think the game does best, and to me that is the visuals as well as the kind of environmental presentation. The weird alien flora and fauna are all colorful, and the myriad of different biomes bring in a sense of variety and distinction to the minute-to-minute experience. But really, I believe these locations speak for themselves. I mean, you'll see them in the background of the video here. There's just a lot of variety. You know exactly where you're at on the map just by looking ahead of you, and I think that distinction's really nice, especially for even people viewing if you're going to stream the game or something like that. With these environmental distinctions, you've got stuff like the lumberyard that has the lumber you need for certain quests, as well as going to some higher danger areas to get better loot. You can really see how the visuals kind of feed into the gameplay in an almost indirect but very direct kind of way. And then you've got stuff like the creatures, which all look really cool. I wish there was a little bit more variety. I don't think there's enough types of creature in the game, but I like that they held out and made it to where some only inhabit certain areas of the map. Continuing with the creatures, I really like also that you have to take care of them or at least deal with them in a couple different ways. For instance, there's the little bombers that you don't want them to get close to you as they will suicide, and they'll have a couple different effects such as fire or poison or whatever. And then there's things like the Striders, which are just your basic little pack enemy. There's usually more than one around, so you always have to look out, but they're pretty simple. And then you've got one that shoots poison at you from afar, or if he's up close, he's going to do a lot of damage with a melee. And then you've got something like the Advanced Strider, or even what I like to call the Deathclaw. I know that's not what they're actually called, but the character model looks like it was just swapped onto a Deathclaw asset. I mean, he walks like one, he's just as fucking creepy as one. And let me tell you, when the level alert says high danger, I'm always looking out for these guys because they are absolutely brutal. And while the bigger enemies do tend to pose a little bit more of a threat, there is one concern I have with the AI of the game, the PvE element of the PvPvE. And that's that I just don't think it's that challenging overall. You have to really be in a bad situation to not have the upper hand on these creatures at all times. The AI is really lackluster. You can sneak past them really easily, or you can take them out and they can't really path trace all too well. Like, don't get me wrong, in the best of conditions, flat ground, everything going around, these enemies will do okay. But I really just don't think the AI is very smart in this game, and it just makes me as the player feel like I'm God when it comes to these enemies. Again, except for the top boss. And jumping off of that big guy is where I'd like to bring in a little bit of comparisons from Hunt Showdown for just a minute. While the bulk of the gameplay loop was actually taken more from Escape from Tarkov in a sense, with selling items, inventory management in a pretty unique way. It's not as intense as Tarkov by any means, but it is free to play. This is the more accessible version of it in a lot of ways. But with that being said, one thing I really do wish they would have taken from Hunt Showdown as a kind of mesh of the two games is actually the contracts themselves. We've already got quests in the game and different things that we have to do for these vendors. However, I would love to see them take a high-value target, such as the Deathclaw-like creature would be fine for one of them. There's not that many on the map. And unlike Hunt Showdown, where there's only 1 or 2 at most on the map, they can have 3 or 4 throughout. It doesn't need to be everyone vying for this one creature, but they need to be an event. You know, advanced move sets, crazy things to do, but if you deal with them in the right way, you should be relatively safe, even in solo play. But I think boss fights added to the game would be a huge benefit to the gameplay. I mean, it might even cut down on exit camping of the game. You know, people not waiting by the extraction points, that way they can kill you with all your gear. Perhaps people will start camping the bosses instead, and it just gives you a lot more potential to open up. Either way, let me know what you think of this idea. I'm still relatively new to the game compared to people that have hundreds of hours, so maybe you might think it's stupid, but I think that would be a really good idea. Now, as you're moving around the map, there are a couple negatives that I did notice that I really did want to make note of here. One bug that I did find, and it might also not be completely a bug as it is and just something that was overlooked, and that's that there is missing audio, which is in fact part of the bug. However, there are some things where there are misplaced audio just as well. For instance, while walking over like a deep bit of water compared to like a really thin bit, it all sounds like I'm just stepping through a puddle, when in reality it's much deeper than that. Running through higher water should alert people to my place from really far away, but it doesn't, and it also would be a great benefit of sneaking through the water. Unfortunately, it just doesn't play that way. Enemies actually sound quieter when in the water, as well as I believe I sound quieter in the water, so it's just a lose-lose all around, and I'm not really a big fan of it. But that's just one example. There are different parts of the game where audio is missing. Never anything super crazy, but I would hate for it to be someone's footsteps at some point. That would be a big problem. Now, with that being said, though, visual bugs are something I really didn't notice any of. You know, there's the occasional weird ragdoll of an enemy when you kill them, but that's really it, and they eventually disappear. But one thing I did actually notice is that when looking at a light source, say there's in the world a lamp or something shining light towards the player's screen, there's always this persistent white line on the right side of my screen whenever it's going on, and I'm not really sure what's going on with that, but I really hope it does get fixed. It's nothing major, it doesn't take up part of the screen or anything, it's not like a flashbang, but it is super annoying and takes me out of the immersion, if it were. But bouncing off of the sound, that brings me up into my next couple of points. First off, the guns of the game are honestly pretty cool. They all shoot rather differently, and as you go up the rarity of weapons, they get way more powerful and they feel way better to use in a weird kind of way, and they get more high-tech and advanced as you go as well. Now, guns in this game are really satisfying to shoot, and I think it's pretty clear that it's due to the audio design. You know, everything sounds like it's got a punch to it, super weighty. Combine that with the kickback of the gun on screen, and I think it all flows really well together. They are meshed together perfectly, and to that, I've got to give a lot of props. This game feels really high quality in that regard. Another aspect of the guns that I really enjoy is the attachment system. You can attach like foregrips, sights, as well as magazines, all to fit the gun exactly how you like. Would you like a quick draw mag, which makes you reload faster? Would you like a foregrip that allows you to aim down sights faster, or to pull out the gun faster while swapping weapons in a fight per se? Either way, you can do just a little bit of customization that way. And then of course there are different skins that you can get within the battle pass, which I'm going to talk about the monetization in just a little bit. But overall, I really enjoy the guns in this game, and it's definitely not one of the weaker aspects. Now, while I'm still talking about things within the world of Fortuna 3 before we head up to the Prospect Hub world, I actually wanted to talk about those freak storms themselves. And honestly, these are really awesome. I've never heard such high quality thunder sound effects. The lightning itself is kind of, it looks like an electricity storm at times. You can kind of see the particles through the air. The rain's really nice. I like the way the screen blacks out when it's raining. You really need a flashlight. And they're dangerous. You need to take cover or else you probably will die, unless you plan on going through all your healing items trying to get somewhere. But there's nowhere you need to go, because when storms are going on, you can no longer extract. No one's going to risk coming down to get you to extract you out. And what I really like about storms is actually that you know they're coming before they're happening. It's kind of like the, the hair raising on your arm type thing, but like not really at all, because that doesn't happen in the game, don't worry. What I mean is that like the light rains start in first, and you can really tell it's gonna ratchet up sometimes. And for me, unfortunately, what I really don't like is when the game kind of tells you, hey, you can no longer extract. I wish they just wouldn't tell you. I wish it would just be like, all right, let's wait until the storm's over. Or maybe instead of giving a 5-minute notice like, hey, extractions will stop in 5 minutes, the storm's about to come in, I'd rather it be something shorter, maybe a minute at most, or 2 if you're really feeling generous. I think 5 minutes is just a bit too long, because really, unless you're going from one corner of the map to the absolute other, you can get pretty much anywhere you want to go on this map in about 5 minutes time, assuming you don't run into pretty much anything. Oh, and another thing that I didn't even think about, this is a completely well-scripted review. I can't believe I didn't put this in there sooner. What I really like about the game world and the way it's set up is there's so much to do. For instance, there's key cards you can find to get into certain closed areas, which is something I know is in Tarkov. There are kind of light puzzles throughout the world where there's these like power cell generator things that you can equip to one point and then take them out and then put on another to open a unpowered door. Very Dishonored style, if you kind of think about the whale oil or whatever it's called. And it just feels nice. It's never anything too crazy. You can just follow the chords. But it's simple just enough that even while you're dealing with enemies, you can potentially be thinking about where you're going to go next, even if there's a puzzle in your way. And that's something I really like. Or the fact that there's these ore veins that you can't access unless the drill comes down from the sky, and then you have to go climb up on it. For instance, I had this fight with a guy on that, and it really felt like a James Bond moment. He was on the level above me shooting down. I was shooting up at him, and eventually he did get me because he had the high ground, and I'm not Obi-Wan Kenobi. I can't turn that against me, and I also don't have a bad Disney Plus show yet, so I guess we'll see. But to kind of summarize my thoughts on the main gameplay loop is that I think the audio bugs and the visual bugs definitely can take you out of the experience, and I would hate for them to ever damage the experience in any meaningful way. Small gripes aside, like things missing, like potential boss fights or smarter AI, they're all small prices to pay when the PvP is actually pretty good. If you don't have any cheaters, of course, again, something I still didn't have. And even if you do die and you lose all your gear, you have to come back, there are ways that it feels more fun. There's the puzzles throughout the world, as well as the very different and unique environments and enemies to look at, all help make it feel very unique even when playing hours later. Throw in the occasional world event that's really unique, like a comet shower or the mining drill coming down and having a really cool fight with someone there, and you've got a pretty fun world to pillage and try to survive in. Now with that being said, let's extract and hop up to the Prospect Station, where the other major portion of the game takes place. This is where I feel the game lacks the most bit of quality. There are 3 vendors to get quests from, as well as max out your relationship with them through doing so, and getting access to better gear to buy. You can fabricate weapons if you have the proper materials. There's even like a Discord app, little notice there. And there's a bar, but that's good for like 2 seconds when the tutorial's going on, but that's really about it, except for the living quarters. This is where it gets really disappointing for me personally. In the living quarters, you can upgrade things like your stash to increase your capacity, as well as a few other things, and you're going to be doing so with resources you find in the world. But what I don't like about the living quarters, as they are all instanced, you go into your own living quarters, there's no one else going to be in there, is that you can't really customize it in any meaningful way. This would be great that if I have friends in my party, I can invite them to my pad, and we can do whatever we want. Hell, if you didn't want to do that and you just wanted to stick with the upgrades that they already have in the living quarters, what I would really like to see is actually the bar that I previously mentioned to have games in it. For instance, there's already like a pool table, there's like it looked like a checker chessboard type thing holographically on one table. I would love for a way to bet, socialize with people in the game, and basically gain or waste my currencies however I see fit. The game shows off the importance of prospectors and how it's important that we go down and get loot, riches, and whatever else we need. However, it doesn't really give us any opportunities to have fun spending that money or time. And I think this would be the best way to do it. But unfortunately, my gripes around the hub don't end there. Another issue that happens basically right as you start the game is the character creator. There is none. You pick from a preset of a couple different pre-made characters that you are going to be using until you can change at any given time, but you can only use these characters unless you unlock more in the premium pass. So to be clear, we are not switching characters every time we die or anything like that. We're meant to be the same person as you phone when you die, so you don't actually technically die on the planet. However, character creation was left out in favor of microtransactions and promoting the premium pass to get more characters that potentially you may like more. I don't agree with this. You can monetize the equipment we wear, you can monetize the skins of the guns, things like that. That is fine. But I really believe that if we're going to have one character that we play as continuously, and I really do believe that we should be able to make them look however we want, and not some really close but kind of not really knockoff version of us. And it's especially painful considering the fact that as you're walking around the hub area, you actually see yourself in third person. So you have to look at this bland-ass template character instead of one you potentially could have created. I think that would have been so much cooler, especially with the art style of the game. You can see how you'd look in that universe. But I've kind of went around it enough. Let's talk about the final point in this video, and probably the most important point, considering you basically know the gameplay loop from Escape from Tarkov. as well as some of the PvE trappings of Hunt Showdown, the biggest point of contention for a lot of players will actually be the monetization. Once again, this is a free-to-play game, and I have yet to spend any money in the game, and I have yet to feel a direct push towards it. So I've got to give props for that, but I will say that as resources dwindle, I could definitely see this being something that you'd want to do a little more of. So there are 3 major currencies that are featured in the game. There's your basic credits, which act as dollars pretty much, nothing too crazy. This is the one that you're going to have the highest number of at any given time. Then after that, you've got the premium currency, which is what's paid for. You can also generate a little bit of this at a time, especially more as you upgrade your living quarters, so that's pretty cool. Potentially over time, you could earn a free battle pass by doing so, which I gotta say, kind of makes the game a little less microtransaction-y if you think about it, but that'd take a lot of time and a lot of upgrading to get it done efficiently. So either way, you'll be spending a lot of time in the game. But regardless, this is a situation where you need $9.50 to get the battle pass, just like Fortnite or something like that. But instead of costing $8 for enough to get it, you're going to have to spend, I believe, $13 US dollars. So a little more on the expensive side, but once again, this is a free-to-play game, so if the skins you like or anything in there is something you want, that's absolutely fine. And, no judgment, it actually doesn't look terrible, but it's not something I'm super interested in for this game yet. I'm definitely not, living in the game as I do with other multiplayer games like Fortnite. The final currency is actually just a token to basically get some of your gear back if you do die. It's part of the insurance claim policy that when you go down into the world, right before you load down in, you'll get the option to insure some of your gear. Basically, if you die, some of it can get brought back, or a salvage team can get it sent out to potentially get it back with a chance of a payout. And while all 3 of these have 3 very different clear uses, and some of them can even be kind of ascertained in a way that's not paid for, I still can't get over the fact that there are 3 different currencies at the top of the screen. The game really does feel like kind of a mobile game. Combine that with the fact that the living quarters upgrades do take real time, starting out as simple as a minute going up to 5 and then so on and so forth. It really does feel like a game that's meant to kind of push you to use the currencies in order to buy more rather than earning them. And that's honestly something I am pretty negative on in my thoughts, but it's something that I can easily ignore, and something you can too, especially if you just want to play the game. It's a very competent shooter in a lot of ways. From the attachments to the great audio design, it really does feel like a tactical game that you can take a lot of time with. Unfortunately for a lot of players, the game is being marred by cheaters right now, but supposedly there have been some updates to the anti-cheat, so hopefully that's going to be resolved soon. I guess we'll have to see though, but it has become a rampant issue. So for right now, I'm gonna have to say, kind of wait it out a little bit on this one. There's no cost to entry, so if you want to hop in, go ahead and hop in. That's not what I'm saying at all, but if you want to really make sure you're getting a good first impression, a good experience, maybe follow them on social media, check the dev updates, see when you get to see a little bit more positive reviews on Steam. Either way, that's been my review. I really like this game, but I'm not 100% with it. There's some things that I think are missing, there's some things that I think need changed, but more importantly, there's things that are just good. Honestly, there's things that don't even deserve to be this good in a free-to-play game, even if the microtransactions are pretty crazy when it gets into the higher tier stuff. Regardless, thank you so much for watching this video. My name's Falling Hurts. I do reviews all the time now, kind of. They're pretty rare, but I just did one for the Outlast DLC for Whistleblower. But yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.